a hopefully quick little addition to what we're doing, Boeing and regulatory capture. Boeing built this brand new airplane, the 787. It's a really great airplane. But after it was in service and sold to airlines and flying around the world, it was grounded for electrical problems. Batteries that were catching on fire because of a misdesign. It should never have gotten that far. It got that far because the FAA allowed Boeing to control the certification process. You would have thought that we would have learned our lesson there, but that's not the way these things work. The political process puts pressure on the company and the FAA. So there's too close a relationship between the FAA and Boeing. Boeing's really the only people that the FAA are in charge of, kind of, and there's too much of a relationship. So here's a 737-200. This is the way it looked originally back in the 60s. Look at where the engine is. It's under the wing, kind of far back. Look at how close the airplane is to the ground. The 737, designed in the 60s, it's designed for you to roll a staircase up to it, not for the walkways that we have today, but for them to roll a set of stairs up to it for people to get on and off, so it's really low to the ground. Okay? Now there's multiple versions of the 737 over the years, and Boeing has to deal with trying to put bigger and bigger engines on this airplane that's not designed for them. Okay? And every time the FAA just considers it a minor change. So here's the 737 MAX, the plane that crashed twice and is currently grounded as I talk. Look at where that engine is. Look at the size of that engine compared to that engine, and look at the position of it. They pushed it all the way forward. There's a brand new wing on there, and then they pushed the engine all the way forward, and it changes the way the airplane flies, so that if you really jam on the engines, the nose tends to pop up. They also lengthened the front landing gear to get that engine to fit, but they couldn't lengthen that landing gear so that... Anyway, the trick here is now, the FAA lets Boeing basically do all the certification of this because it's, according to the FAA, just a minor change. From there to there with all the intermediate steps, just a minor change. Boeing put some software into the computer of this plane to pop the nose down if the plane thinks the nose is popping up. Not the pilot, the plane. This new system isn't mentioned in any of the training materials, and they only give the pilots 30 minutes of training materials to go from an old 737 to the new 737. And this new system isn't mentioned anywhere in anything that they give to the pilots or is in the cockpit of the airplane. Tied to this feature is a new safety warning that can show up in the cockpit if the angle of attack system is wrong. And I won't go into what all that means, but it's a new safety feature. It puts 3 words onto the screen that the pilots look at to see if everything's okay. Boeing charges $70,000 for it, and Lion and Ethiopian don't buy it. U.S. airlines give the FAA a whole bunch of reports of problems with the nose pitch, but they don't crash because they all spent the $70,000 per plane to upgrade their software system. Lion Ethiopian didn't do it. There's a problem. The angle of attack system is screwed up. On the Lion airplane for sure, we've seen the data. Ethiopian, we haven't seen the data, but probably. The Lion airplane crashes. Shouldn't have. If they had had that extra safety feature, they wouldn't even have taken off. But the point is, the pilots, generally speaking, didn't know this feature was there, didn't know this new software was on there, weren't trained in the characteristics of the new plane. Its change in flying characteristics weren't explained to them. And it's because the regulatory system was left to the hands of the manufacturer, not the FAA, right? It's like we let the drug company tell us there aren't any side effects, and we went ahead and put the drug out, right? We wouldn't do that. We test it. We make them show us that there aren't any side effects. The FAA says, hey, we don't have the staff to do this right. Well, then people died. Needs to get done. There's a way this is supposed to get done by law, but because the regulatory system is captured by the manufacturer, that's not the way it happens.